I think when you're a chair of a large company, the biggest dilemma you face is how do you sustain consistent messaging in a very complex environment to some really challenging dynamic stakeholders. So, and in the instance of Eskom being the 11th largest electricity utility in the world, and the volatility of the discussion around, for instance, a very huge loan of more than $3 billion in an environment that was very polarized around coal, we were able to have really meaningful conversations with in some very powerful platforms ranging from, for instance, the Press Club in DC, and some of the one-on-one engagements we could have with influential people inside the World Bank system, but also good dialogue with stakeholders. I guess DC is the policy-making capital of the world, so you could also gain access into networks you'd otherwise not have gained access to. If I reflect on some of the media engagements we had in the UK environment, we had the occasion of also, at the backdrop of a state visit to the United Kingdom by the President of the country, to have side dialogues with key editors who could give us good positioning. But most importantly, I think the dialogue that stands out always is the dialogue with Lord St. John's in the House of Lords, who is a good friend of South Africa, but also being able to reassure him of the good intents that came with that sort of application. I think Mpho comes at the right time. I recall a few years back, in fact, a decade ago, I used to be chief executive of one of the global brand building houses. And we used to toil with this notion of cause-related marketing, where you adopt a good cause and associate your brand with it. Because since the turn of the century, consumers are becoming much more demanding. They're demanding much more credibility from the corporations whose brands they use or consume. They demand more credibility from the leaders who lead those organizations. In the 19th century, we used to have leaders arguing that the business of business is business, which meant that you're all about making profits and maximizing value for shareholders, or perhaps share owners. And the whole idea of maximizing value and goodwill for both share owners and for stakeholders always took the back burner. And so the promise of an initiative that is going to facilitate meaningful dialogue, meaningful insights around public policy issues in a public-private partnership spirit is an initiative that is long overdue, and I think we should encourage both BETS and the University of Pretoria to steam along with the initiative. And really we hope that it would bring, ultimately the benefit is if it can bring the right players around the same table, having dialogue around the same important issues. I think Mpho would be deemed to have added great value.